Number 10 brings us speaking with jinn. In one Islamic narration, a jinn called Hama came in the form of an old man that was holding a staff, and he was somebody who actually accepted Islam. And by the way, he was the son of Hem, the son of Lakhis, the son of Iblis. He was converted to Islam by the Prophet Noah, and he lived all the way up until the time of Prophet Muhammad. Very unique experience. Number 9 brings us becoming invisible. When the Prophet planned to migrate to Medina, the tribes in Mecca, they came up with a plan to get rid of him for good. Each tribe, they sent a representative and they surrounded the house of the Prophet on that night. But Muhammad, he just walked out right in front of them and nobody saw him at all. They were completely blinded to him. Another miraculous event of Prophet Muhammad was the horse in the sand incident. The Prophet Muhammad and Abu Bakr, they were on their way to Medina when they were being followed by an assassin named Suraka. And Abu Bakr, he started to get a little bit worried and a bit fearful, but Muhammad looked at him and said this: "Don't be sad, Allah is certainly with us." Then from there, he looked towards the assassin, Suraka, and his horse's feet started to get stuck in the sand. And Suraka initially was able to free his horse's feet from the sand and from getting stuck, but when he tried to continue to follow the Prophet Muhammad, well, his horse's leg got stuck again and smoke started coming out of the sand. And that's when Suraka realized that, yeah, he did not stand a chance. So he had to turn back and go where he came from. The miracle at number 7 has to do with water flowing from Muhammad's hands. There was a time when the Prophet Muhammad was with around 300 of his companions, and they were in a place called Zara. And the time of the day was about the time for the afternoon prayer, but the people, they couldn't find any water to make wudu or wash themselves. And the Prophet Muhammad, he told them to look for just a little bit of water, just a little bit. And when they found that, then he dipped his hand into it, and that's when water started to flow from his hands like a fountain. And all 300 people there made wudu, so they were able to wash themselves, as well as they could use the water for other purposes. Number 6 brings us healing sick people. In one Islamic narration, one of the Prophet's companions was hit with an arrow in the eye. Ouch! Now the arrow was so deep that it went through the back of his head. But Muhammad simply placed his hands over his companion's eye and everything was healed, just like that. The miracle halfway in at number 5 is food increase. So the Prophet Muhammad, he actually fed more than 100 people from very small amounts of food. Whenever he placed his hands on any food, it caused it to increase and everyone could eat till their stomachs were filled, as well as there were foods left over. And in one narration, he fed more than 100 men from a cup of milk. Each person was able to drink milk until they were filled, and actually they didn't have to refill the cup at all. Each of the men, they drank to their satisfaction, and the cup still was filled with milk as if nobody drank from it. So imagine seeing that. Mind-blowing. Now, this is a big event coming in at number 4, the Isra and Miraj. This was very miraculous. Known in English as the Night of Journey and Ascension, this is reported to be one of the most amazing miracles of the Prophet. It's called Al-Isra wal Miraj in Arabic. And this was a night where the Prophet Muhammad, under the guidance of the Archangel Jibril, traveled to Kaaba in Mecca to Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem and then up into the heavens. And on this journey, it was pretty phenomenal. He met some prophets of old. He met prophets like Musa or Moses, Isa, also known as Jesus, and Ibrahim, also known as Abraham. He led them in prayer, and he reached a very high place where he could even hear the pens that were writing people's good deeds or bad deeds. He also was able to see heaven and hell, and he was elevated into the presence of God. But he, of course, was not able to see God's face at all. The miracle at number 3 is the Prophet Muhammad communicating with objects. There's been reports of several occasions where trees and stones and mountains and even the sand would actually acknowledge the Prophet when he passed by. But there was one incident where one Jewish woman, she was roasting a goat and it was filled with a very strong poison. So she sent it to the Prophet Muhammad and the people with him to eat it. But before the Prophet ate, the goat spoke to him. The roasted goat, spoke to him and told him that there's poison here, so don't be eaten. So Prophet Muhammad was able to avoid eating the poisonous food, as well as warn the people with him to not eat. Miracle number 2 is splitting the moon. So the polytheists at the time of the Prophet, they kept insisting that they wanted to see a miracle, they wanted to see a sign. And they said that they will believe if the Prophet could actually show them the splitting of the moon in half. So when Allah granted the Prophet Muhammad this ability, he called them all to one place to witness this. And that's what he did. He split the moon in two. But in their arrogance, they still rejected him and his message. Now, the miracle at number 1, some of you probably guessed it, but it's simply the miracle of the Quran. There's a claim in the Quran itself that no one can actually imitate the Quran because it's perfect and its quality is above any other. It's a very superior book, a very superior recitation. It was revealed fully in Arabic, Prophet Muhammad's mother tongue, and it's believed by Muslims to have all the answers of life and all the instructions and directions to live a life on the right path that leads to heaven. Muslims also believe that the Quran is the verbatim word of God, and this is why it's set apart from any other book on the planet and even throughout history. So this is why the Quran comes in at number 1 in this episode. All right, so let's start off with number 10. This prophecy is about the end of the world. There is a large amount of the Quran that talks about the events of the last days, the end of the world, and the Quran describes how the world is going to be destroyed as well as rebuilt again, and how the dead will be raised to life again, and that they're going to be judged and either go to paradise or they're going to go to hell. And the Quran also describes hell and heaven in great detail. And since the Prophet Muhammad was the person who recited the Quran, these prophecies of the end of the world are attributed to him. There's also a prophecy of Fatima's passing away. The belief is that the Prophet Muhammad prophesied that Fatima would join him first of all after his passing away. And before his passing away, the Prophet called his daughter Fatima to his bedside, and then he informed her that she would be the first among his families to join him after he passed away, and that's what happened. Fatima joined her father in death 6 months later. There's also a prophecy having to do with the fire mentioned by Prophet Muhammad. There's a fire that will appear from the bottom of Aden, which is in modern day Yemen, and it's going to drive people as they try to run away from it to the land of modern day Syria. Then there's going to be a horn that will be blown and everyone will be left in complete terror and horror. Number 7 brings us the prophecy of Pharaoh, that Pharaoh's body is going to be found. Now there's a big debate around this as to the identity of the Pharaoh in the time of Musa or Moses. However, it's believed that based on the Quran that it was actually Ramesses II. He was the Pharaoh at the time. So the Quran and the Bible state that Pharaoh was drowned in the sea. However, the Quran does differ from the biblical account, where it says that the body of Pharaoh was saved as a sign for future generations, and the body of Ramses II has survived in a mummified form. So fast forward to the year 1881, this mummy was discovered among a group of royal mummies that had been removed from their original tombs for fear of people stealing them. So Muslims view this as a very accurate prophecy that the Prophet Muhammad had mentioned. Number 6 is a prophecy of Islam and Islam prevailing. Prophet Muhammad, he shares a prophecy that his religion would prevail over all other religions in the entire world. Now, specifically, this passage says, "It is he who has sent his messenger Muhammad with guidance and the religion of truth, Islam, to make it superior over all religions." And this is referred to in Surah 9 verses 33, as well as Surah 48 verses 28, and also Surah 61 verses 9 in the Quran. Next up at number 5, there is the prophecy of 3 trials. It's believed that 3 trials are gonna hit the Muslim world before the Antichrist shows up. There's a trial of retreat and war. then there's a trial of false happiness. And this is going to come from a man, a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, but he will not be a very good person. People are going to start to resolve their differences with this weak and very unstable leader that's going to show up. Then the trial number 3 is that there's going to be a huge catastrophe that's going to hit every single person in the Muslim world. And when people start to think that it's over, it's going to hit them again. And at the end, there's going to be 2 groups of people. One group is going to be of complete pure belief, and the other group is going to be full of hypocrisy. And when this happens, Muslims are told to look for the Antichrist to appear at any minute. Another very popular prophecy is of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, aka Gog and Magog. They are going to be released. Their army is going to be swarming down a very rugged, elevated terrain, and they're going to come down to destroy anyone and anything that they can find. People will set up defenses in their cities, and it's said that Jesus is going to lead his followers to take up a defensive position up in the mountains. And then when they think that they have destroyed all those on the earth, Ya'juj and Ma'juj will try to kill those that are up in the elevated area. And that's when Jesus and his followers will pray to God, and God is going to send a disease that is going to completely destroy Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Then from there's going to be a heavy rainfall, and then the earth will produce its fruit again, fruit and vegetation. Ya'juj and Ma'juj, they're described as having round faces, very small eyes, and black hair with reddish yellow highlights. They're very monstrous looking people, but they still are humans. The prophecy of Dajjal is also a very popular one mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad told his followers that false Messiah would come and misguide a lot of people. There's a detailed description of how the Dajjal is going to look. Prophet Muhammad said that Dajjal is going to be blind in one eye, and he also said that the eye that's not working for Dajjal is going to look like a floating grape. Also, his complexion is described as being sort of like reddish white. Dajjal is also going to have a prominent forehead and a very wide neck. He's going to be short in height, but he's going to be very, very, very powerful. He's also going to have a hunch in his back. He'll walk with his feet apart, not like a normal person though, so it's going to be a little bit different how he walks. Dajjal is going to have long, curly, thick hair, and the locks of hair are going to look like snakes hanging from his head. It's also mentioned that Dajjal is not going to have any children. Enmity among Christians is a prophecy up next. Enmity among the Christian denominations until the day of resurrection is mentioned in the Quran in Surah 5 verses 14. And this is what it says. And from those who say we are Christians, we took their covenant, but they forgot a portion of that of which they were reminded. So we caused among them animosity and hatred until the day of resurrection. And Allah is going to inform them about what they used to do. The last prophecy of Prophet Muhammad that I'll share in this episode is the prophecy of tall buildings. The Prophet Muhammad mentioned that there would be signs and forewarnings of the approach of the last day. He mentioned that barefooted Bedouins would be competing in building tall buildings. And today, if we look in the Arabian Peninsula, the Arabs who used to be very impoverished herders of camel and sheep, they're actually competing in building the tallest towers. Some of them include the Kingdom Center in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, as well as you'll see extremely tall buildings in different parts of the Middle East.